Hello everybody, it's Leo once again. Today we are here to talk about the India-Pakistan war, an underreported conflict in the West, to say the least, and a misreported conflict, unfortunately, in the country, or one of the main countries where it's taking place as far as I know. I think this conflict is so important. That's why I chose it to be my third live stream topic. Please hit that like, comment, and subscribe button, guys. It helps a lot more than you know. Get those likes up, get those subs up. We really are trying to do our best here to do some honest coverage. So look, what we're going to get into today is obviously very sad. It is a conflict that has unalived people, that has hurt people. And because of this, I want to keep it tame. I want to keep everyone okay. I want everyone to not be too angry at each other, because we're just going to be analyzing this from a meta place. So just remove emotions from this, because I think this conflict is so important for the future of geopolitics at large. I think that the echoes of it will be felt for decades and decades outside of India and Pakistan. So for all those reasons, we're going to get into it today. Now, what I have to say before we start, and I don't want you guys to think that this is going to be some anti-India thing, but I have to get this out of the way just so people know. India has a public image problem in the West at the moment. In the United States, for sure. I'm not sure about Western Europe or Eastern Europe, really. I think we are all aware of this. These TikTok videos about the food and the street food in India. And, I don't like to feed into those memes. I think that they can be a little mean, a little exaggerated. But I do think it's important that we play this video here to start, because I just want you guys to know what we're getting into here in terms of attitudes towards India that you'll find in the general population from the West, because videos like this go viral. No shade to this YouTuber. I'm sure he does some great work. But I just think it's instrumental to see how people are feeling about India in the West these days. Let's watch.
Believing India. Now I have left India. Time for my final review. Don't go that place. Stay far away from India. Never go there. Never go there. I will never ever go there ever again. They don't want you there. They do not want tourists, whatever they say. They do not want you there. I've been there, and I've been to over 6 different cities, spent over a month and a half there, and I've met enough people in enough different places to know they do not like the English. They do not like the English. I don't know why. They just don't like them. They do not like me. They don't use the toilets there. They wee and poo in the streets. They don't use bins there. They throw litter around everywhere. They swear at you in the streets. No one smiles at you. No one says, "Hi, you okay?" Instead, they look at you like they want to kill you. What a terrible place. What a terrible place. I will never ever be going back ever. And I blame that on Delhi Belly in India. You're not going to eat well there. You're not going to sleep well there. And you're just going to get absolutely harassed, because another thing, it gets so frustrating. And the thing is, no one is kind for the sake of being kind there. There's always an ulterior motive. And here's the thing about when I do an evaluation of a place, or when I see a stereotype of a place. The thing with stereotypes, guys, is that usually it's a minority of people within a country that will make it a bad stereotype. And I wanted to see if that was the case for India. And you know what? No, I was proven actually wrong. It wasn't a minority. It was in fact the majority. So the stereotype was real. The stereotype was real, and that's the one thing I can say. It is a majority problem, and it ruins it for the minority people. That's my final review of the place. I am out, and now in Pakistan. Let's go. Come on, I'm so excited. I can't believe I've done it. Oh, I will never, ever go back to India. And that is a fact. Comment saying, come back, son. We're so hospitable. Oh, I can't even say that word. I've got to give it to you. The rumours are true. Within the first few hours, I have enjoyed Pakistan more than I enjoyed any of my India trip. So for India, shame on you, honestly. Honestly, shame on you, Pakistan, and the Pakistan people. You guys have been amazing so far. Like, that's not me bum licking, I'm just saying it's absolutely been great. Absolutely been great. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, what a day.
So I think that it's important to watch this because I saw this sentiment growing in the West, this anti-Indian sentiment, and I actually thought it would affect the war. And I think it kind of has. I think that a lot of people are now biased against India at the middle level, the average level in the West. And I don't think that that's exactly relevant to the conflict, right? I don't think that people choose conflicts based on choose sides on who they like or dislike, right? That's a very low thing, right? However, it's a great YouTube video. Watch the whole thing. Definitely worth checking out. I'm just showing you this so you can get an understanding. Kamalesh, I am not a dollard for Pakistan, as I'm going to get into the video. I promise you we're going to cover this from a pretty neutral angle. I think it's pretty important to say from the start, guys, I don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't root for either side here. I just think it's important to be realistic. And the only reason I'm covering these negative anti-Indian attitudes is because I think they're relevant to the conflict and how it has gone about. It's not meant to shade on India. I've never been to India or Pakistan. I've only been to China and Asia. Been to Saudi, but yeah, that's Asia. But that's about it. I don't have a judgment on them. I'd love to see the Taj Mahal. I like Indian food. I like Pakistani food. I have Indian friends. I don't have Pakistani friends just because I haven't met any Pakistanis. It's hard to find them in the United States, Miami in particular, maybe. So no problem with Indians or Pakistanis. I'm telling you guys, just keep that in mind. I'm only covering this because I think it's relevant to the conflict. So why do I think this conflict is so important? I think this conflict is important because of the role that China played in it. China played a decisive role in this conflict. As it stands today, this conflict was over Kashmir. Kashmir has been in conflict for decades and decades. Right now, the moment is saying that there is a ceasefire. However, I think that this is much more of a Pakistani victory than a ceasefire. I think that that's not what's being covered. I think, first of all, what I want to cover here is something that's unfortunate, and it's something that it's not an Indian problem. This is a problem in Latin America as well as other places. What we have here, I want to show you guys, India has a big problem with misinformation, not disinformation, misinformation. I think what's relevant in this article here, which really, really surprised me, is that according to experts surveyed for the World Economic Forum, the WEF, a prestigious organization, some people don't like them, but prestigious organization, India was ranked the highest for the risk of misinformation and disinformation in their 2024 Global Risk Report. That's not good. And we saw in this conflict how, even the Guardian's covering this. I'm not a Guardian fan, how social media lies fueled a rush to war between India and Pakistan. I've seen articles that talk about how even previous to this conflict, videos went viral in Kashmir or anywhere else, and the Indian public is being misled by Indian media as to the reality of these conflicts. This article here is really interesting, and it dives into how people are presenting what the public wants to believe or what they want the public to believe, and the public buys it. And it's unfortunate, but that's what happens, This is a problem across the world, but not particularly an Indian problem. But I think it's important to mention. This is why I'm trying to be neutral here. I also think it's going to be incredibly difficult to find good information on this. Is why I'm going to rely more on historical stuff, because it's a recent conflict. I think this is one of these few cases where Wikipedia is probably the most reliable source, because you're not going to find a lot of information on this conflict that is accurate. The Fog of War, watch a great documentary. It proves to you how these conflicts, the first casualty is always truth. So we don't know exactly what's going on. I'm trying to parse here the reality of it, okay? I will not pick a side, audio. India number one, I'm okay with that sentiment. India number one. All right, so before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about the history here, what I find relevant. The first thing I find relevant here, well, actually, before we do that, let's look at the best report I've seen so far on this conflict, which was by an Indian anchor at Bloomberg, who I think was incredibly honest in his reporting here. Let's watch this video.
Industry-led research group alleges that China provided air defense and satellite support to Pakistan during its recent clash with India. It suggests Beijing was more directly involved in the conflict than previously disclosed. For more on what this means for ties, just as India and China were beginning to mend relations after several years, we're joined by government reporter Sudhi Ranjan Sen. Sudhi, how exactly did China help Pakistan during that conflict?
Well, from what we are getting to hear from the government right now is that China helped Pakistan reorganize its air defense, and at a very critical time. And this is just after 26 tourists in Kashmir are killed, and there is a clear statement that is coming, or an statement of intent coming from Prime Minister and a government of India, that there is going to be retaliation. So it clearly shows a direct involvement of China, which we did not know. In addition, what we have reported is that China adjusted its satellite passes over India to kind of pick up the deployments, the movements of the military on the Indian side, and the assessment is that these were passed on to Pakistan. So it's a much more direct involvement than just the use of weapons that was known to everybody, and this is kind of coming out for the first time from India.
And this wouldn't sit well with India. What does it mean for India-China ties when, they're just beginning to warm up?
Well, this would be a huge hurdle. This would be one of the major factors, that now India will have to consider. In fact, what we are also getting to learn that now India kind of plans in its, when it's planning for possible conflicts, hostilities in the neighborhood, it plans for a joint front between of China and Pakistan, which is a kind of a complete game changer if you look at it, because then therefore the frontier that India will have to look at when it's planning its military capabilities and strategies is as long as 700 something around 7,000 kilometers long, which is a huge frontier. There is no difference therefore between the western borders with Pakistan and the northern and eastern borders with China. So that is a huge change that the military is looking at.
Sudhi, is there a sense of how Chinese weapons, in particular Chinese air defense, performed in that conflict?
The assessment that that has been shared with us very clearly says that the Chinese air defense equipments performed below par, and in some cases they just could not, do the job that they were supposed to be. Although we have seen Pakistan talking up Chinese weapons, we have not heard anything so far from Beijing. But India's assessment is that these weapons are below par, and China has been using Pakistan to kind of battle test their weapons. Mind you, these systems have never ever been tested before.
So that's what's so important here. Hello, we're playing my video here. In my view, is
Indian
that,
Defense Ministry-led research group.
As we all know, China has not been in a hot war for a long time. I believe their last hot war was with India. Before that, Vietnam. And the United States makes it incredibly difficult for China to test their military tech and advancements, just because the United States has their eyes on China. China can't test out all their stuff on Taiwan because they can't go in there yet. They can't test it anywhere. All Chinese diplomacy has been through OBOR across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and it's all peace diplomacy, infrastructure, money, which is very different. So China does not get an opportunity to really test its weapons. What I'm gathering from this report, and from the people that I've spoken to who are more familiar with this conflict, is that essentially what happened here is that India is a country that has been allied with the U.S. It was part of the non-aligned movement. Obviously, it had connections with the Soviet Union and still has with Russia. But I think that they are a much more U.S. biased country. And the United States, like it does for every nation, does not provide them with the best weaponry. It actually downgrades their weapons to an extent. However, Pakistan and China have a different relationship. If you don't know, China and Pakistan actually have done some amazing things with OBOR, One Belt, One Road. They brought peace to several tribal regions in order to build an amazing highway. And I think that China is giving a lot more confidence to Pakistan and allowing them access to all of their military tech. And they're doing this in order to see how this performs, as well as to help a quasi-ally, right? I think that this goes to the history that I want to get into here, which is that I think that Pakistan is actually better than India in this sense, where ISI, their intelligence service, is oftentimes cartoonishly portrayed, especially in the West. I don't know how it's portrayed in India, but people tend to say that ISI is this rogue intelligence agency, that it actually runs Pakistan. But I think the best analysis of ISI that will inform our historical perspective and then inform us as to why things are the way they are is actually given by Michael Scheuer. If you don't remember who Michael Scheuer was, he was an analyst at the Central Intelligence Agency, and he was in charge of the station that was supposed to get, the guy who did the thing in New York, UBL, right? And Scheuer, in recent years, he's gone a little off the reservation in terms of what he's saying, but I think that in that period of the 2000s through the late 2010s, he was actually giving a lot of wisdom. So I wanted to play here some video of him talking about ISI. Let's start with this one here. And how he explains the way that ISI works and the reality of U.S.-Pakistani cooperation. So let's see that here.
The Pakistanis do receive a lot of aid money from the United States.
Yes.
And, they are fighting as though, batting for both sides. The ISI does, on some level, support the Taliban, or has shown.
Now, before he gives his answer, we're talking here about the war in Afghanistan. It's a little bit of a different context, and a quick plug here. This is the best book on the Afghanistan conflict, so you guys can see it there, that I read in my whole life. I read this like 10 years ago and reread it like 5 years ago. It's an amazing, amazing book. Highly recommend it. If anyone knows Ahmed Rashid, I'd love to interview the guy because this book was just awesome. It's a Yale publication. Such a great book if you wanted to understand the way the Pakistani conflict went. The Afghani conflict went and where it's going. This book, it will change your whole view of Central Asia and the conflict there. So he's speaking in this context, but I think it's relevant to today.
I agree with that, but ISI is like all other intelligence services, whether it's the Australian service or the American service. You're not in the business to help other people. You're in the business of intelligence to protect your own country and support your own government. The idea that ISI is a rogue organization is popular, and even the Pakistanis promote it. But having worked with them for the better part of 20 years, they're a very disciplined, very able intelligence service. As I said, Pakistan doesn't leave the area when we do. They have to stay there and try to stabilize things in their own country. To do that, they believe at least, they have to help reestablish an Islamic country in Afghanistan, an Islamic government. So Afghanistan, if it looks to expand, will look north to Central Asia and not into Pakistan, which in turn allows the Pakistanis to move better than 100,000 troops off of the eastern border back to their western border off the western border rather, back to the eastern border against India, which, whether we like it or believe it or not, they think is their main enemy. So I really find the situation in Afghanistan largely of our own making. No one in the United States gave...
Right, and no, Rid, the conflict is not over, apparently. We're not sure exactly. That's one of the problems. That's why we're covering this today, because we're not sure exactly what's going on. Here's Scheuer, what he's showing, and what I believe about ISI, is that ISI is a very capable and intelligent organization that has always, you could say, played the United States, but in reality, like he's saying, it's out of self-interest. Pakistan exists in Central Asia, and Pakistan has to live with that reality. So Pakistan, unlike what India has done, has been able to keep a more open mind in terms of who they ally with, and they have been able to play off China, the United States, a bit of everyone in particular. Let's see some more clips here, because Scheuer really is a fountain of knowledge when it comes to this stuff here.
Day, all Pakistan did was distribute the arms and money and training that we provided, and the Afghans let us both because they were the ones that did the fighting. They were going to fight whether we gave them a nickel. Mm-hmm. That's not the case today. Basically, Pakistan is not a surrogate, it's a mercenary. Mm-hmm. It's not a proxy. It's doing something for some money, but it's not going to go to the point of wrecking their own country to do it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we recognize that, sir.
You're also very critical of
that clip there is excellent because, and I'm not sure if you need a visa, because what we're seeing here is that Pakistan is a country that it has to exist in the region, and therefore it will always pursue its self-interest. And addressing the point from the first video, I don't think ISI runs Pakistan. It's like any other intelligence service. It exists and it's important, but they're just what we perceive as rogue actions or something like this are just in the best interests of Pakistan. Let's see him here. This was an interesting part because one of the more important things about this conflict is that it was the first conflict in a long time where two nuclear powers went to war. And that's why we had a lot of nerves about it in the West. Here's Scheuer talking about the Pakistani nuclear program, back in the mid-2000s.
Joining us from Washington is CBS News consultant Michael Scheuer, who knows Pakistan well. He once headed the CIA's search for Osama bin Laden. Good morning, Mr. Scheuer.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
We know now that al-Qaeda is making itself quite at home in that border area on the Pakistan-Afghan border. They've been very much at home there for some many, many months now. What does martial law in Pakistan mean to the hunt for al-Qaeda and the hunt for Osama bin Laden?
Well, certainly it'll mean less Pakistani military and police forces available to go into that border area that you spoke about. They'll be busy keeping order in the cities, arresting lawyers, whatever they're up to at the moment. So it'll give more of a breather to the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
You know, we talk so much about the nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. Pakistan is an actual armed nuclear country. When we're watching this crackdown on lawyers in the streets, this talk about elections, no elections, the resurgence of Taliban-esque elements within the Pakistani infrastructure, especially in the areas around Peshawar. What are we to make of all of this, and what happens to the nukes?
Well, I think the Pakistanis are very responsible in control of their nuclear weapons. I think we have to remember that those weapons are designed to be used against India, which is they consider their mortal enemy. So they're going to be pretty much secure, I think. And the United States has now had 6 years to prepare to take them over if we need to do that. So there must be a U.S. military plan to do it. The real worry nuclear-wise in Pakistan is the spread of expertise from the scientists in the Pakistani nuclear community. I think we saw some of that immediately after the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, and there's no reason to really believe that it stopped.
Wow. Michael Scheuer, thank you so much for your expertise.
I think that's an important point for both countries. The nuclear threat is not really the nuclear missile itself. There's much more the spread of knowledge. I can't confirm if this is substantiated, but I do believe that General Gaddafi in Libya was using Indian nuclear scientists to develop his nuclear program. So that's why I think it's important. This will remove the nuke element from your mind. I don't think that it's as relevant as people think. I think that, look, let's be real. No one's going to do this. No one is going to nuke each other here. This would be a suicidal attempt to everyone. Pakistan started the war. I'm not sure about that, QWERTY. I'm not sure. We can't know that for sure at the moment. Let's see here. So we saw this. I think that this is the more interesting clip of him where he's talking about his support for Pakistan At least that's how it's framed in the title of this video. Let's crop this out here. I don't want this on YouTube. This is being reported by a news source.
And for more on the changing role of Pakistan and a lot of other subjects, earlier I spoke to Michael Scheuer, former CIA intelligence officer and adjunct professor of security studies at Georgetown University. We had a whole lot to talk about, but to start off, I did ask him about Pakistan and how certain members of Congress see the country as the next enemy of the United States.
It's a silly notion, but then Senator Graham's a silly man. He has never seen a war he doesn't like, and he's always out looking for more war. Pakistan is simply not enjoying the cordiality of the United States at the moment because it's looking out for its own national interests. President Obama, Prime Minister Cameron have surrendered in Afghanistan. They're pulling out troops. They're going to leave Pakistan with an enormous mess to clean up. And what the Pakistanis are doing is what all countries need to do, and that's look after their own national interests. In what Senator Graham, Secretary Clinton, Senator McCain, President Obama, they want the Pakistanis to do our dirty work for us. And the Pakistanis have simply said, we've supported you for 11 years. We can't do it anymore. You're killing our stability.
I know I was part of a seminar that was one of the main hosts was the former Director General of the ISI during 9/11, and he said it's an immense amount of money to host the U.S. and it's an immense amount of money to host all the people who have left Afghanistan, come over there and have no place to go. And so that was one of the major points. But he also said, and this is a little different subject, but this is about Osama bin Laden, the killing there. He said the country was extremely embarrassed, but also very angry that the U.S. did not work with Pakistan. If Pakistan has been so, basically has hosted the U.S. military there, why is it that there still is so little trust between the two countries?
Because the Pakistanis won't do everything we ask them to do. The United States government, Senator Graham or whoever you mentioned, has a real inability to understand that our interests are not Pakistan's interests. The Pakistanis have helped us more than anyone has a right to expect. And now we're there 10 years. We haven't won the war. We're going to leave without winning. We're leaving the Pakistanis with a mess.
What do you mean when you say a mess?
Well, Afghanistan, they cannot tolerate Karzai's government. Karzai's government is close to the Iranians. It's close to the Russians.
I think that's all that's really relevant for us here. What Scheuer's saying and why I think it's important today is that Pakistan is a very realistic country. It is a country that works well with its allies. And that's why it's such a toss-up in terms of who can win this war. Because the problem is that I can't tell you about the internals of RAW and how India works, but India really strikes me as a country that's much more allied with the United States than with anyone else. Because of this, they have become myopic in how they work with people, right? Because I think a lot of countries are realizing this at this point, where you get some equipment from the U.S., it's downgraded, and you have to pay for the servicing. What's the point of being an ally? Versus China, at least in this conflict, will give you everything they have available to themselves so they can test it. So if they have to use it, and also it gives you a huge advantage. It's probably the best tech next to American tech you can use. And for these reasons, as I wanted to point out, there have been some crazy things out of this war. So, for example, here we already have the BBC charge doing this. And I know Indians are going to say, oh, the BBC, they're bad guys. The bad guy.
So say good night to the bad guy.
But I think that it's relevant here what the BBC is saying, because I get it. They're British. I don't like the British either, okay? I'm Latin American. We're not huge fans. So what I think is important here is that in particular, the use of the J-10s and the J-17 aircrafts, which China has not spoken openly about, as we saw in that Bloomberg clip, are very, very important because they have been extremely successful in taking down Indian planes, which, as the report says, are largely French and Russian-made jets. So India, and this also goes towards their position with China and how they don't get along entirely, but in not allying with China as closely as Pakistan has, they have really limited themselves in the tech that they can get. I mean, let's look at these J-10s. There's pictures of them here. These are the Rafale fighter jets that Pakistan is using. Let's see. Okay, here are the J-10 jets. You know, these look like, I'm not an engineer or anything. I'm just a finance guy, Bitcoin guy, right? But these are the J-10s that are being given to Pakistan. And these look like really modern jets, especially when you compare them to these Indian jets over here. These jets look crazy cool. You know, it's definitely some high-tech stuff. So I bet India would have had access to all of this if they had really tried. I think India also had a lot of confidence in terms of the American, Russian, European technology they were using, because like everyone does in the West all the time, China is always on its last legs. China is so over party constantly in the US. If you believe this, I think that you're stupid. China is a very, very advanced country. If you haven't visited, I highly recommend it. China is a country that has a lot more will than the United States, in my opinion, a lot more ability to do things than the United States. They have a different attitude. And so when you don't ally yourself with China, when you're not getting their tech, you're missing out on a whole lot of technology. And it doesn't matter if China, it's indigenous to it, or if they're stealing it from the US, as people say. But it's just really good tech. And if you don't take it in, what's going to happen? Your planes are going to go down, as they have gone down in this conflict. I think that if there's any lessons learned from this, the reality is that India must reassess who they are allying with if they want to survive a conflict with a much smaller nation. That is Pakistan. I'm not saying, again, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't want anyone to. I would prefer both of these guys lived in peace. That's fine with me. I understand the religious difference, but, you know, I don't think you guys should fight. It's not good to fight. But if you're going to fight, you got to make sure you have the best tech. And you cannot make sure, you know, Kissinger quote, right? To be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend, it's fatal. I'm not saying the U.S. did this on purpose. I'm just saying this. You also have to think in terms of the United States. The United States is not looking at India and going to give you everything the United States has. Why? Because the U.S. gets to test its tech all the time. The United States is involved in so many foreign conflicts, unlike China, that it's totally worth it for them. That's why I think India will have to reassess this relationship. I mean, just this. I mean, we won't know till probably a few years from now, but the amount of planes that they took down is, over a 4-day period is pretty crazy. And like we're saying here, I think it's important to mention, because I see some people in the chat saying that, who started the war or something like that. Look, I think that that's relevant. We had the brutal attack on 26 tourists in Kashmir. But if you want to win a war, you have to think differently than the nationalists would. And that may mean making strange bedfellows with China. And I'm not sure if China would even trust India at this point entirely, unless India made some land concessions, which I don't believe the Indian Hinvatu movement would be particularly happy with. But you got to figure out a way to make this work. Otherwise, you guys are going to be, it's over for India. And that'd be a shame. The West is already kind of fed up with India. We see this with the visa programs that are being terminated and stuff like this. And if that reflects on international policy, it could be a problem for India long term. Let's see here. This is the best article that I found on the 4 days in May, because it was a short conflict crisis. Let's just read the summary, right? Following a terrorist attack on April 22nd, India launched punitive strikes on Pakistan on May 7th. This began a 4-day conflict between India and Pakistan from May 7th through the 10th, which became the most serious military crisis in decades between two rival nuclear states. Both sides have declared victory amid considerable misinformation and disinformation about what occurred. This essay seeks to blah, 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 blah. The conflict represents several military firsts. This was the first time India used cruise missiles on Pakistan, both the BrahMos cruise missile as well as the European Scalp EG. This was the first time Pakistan used conventionally armed short-range ballistic missiles in India in the form of the Fateh-1 and the Fateh-2 missiles. While drones have been used sporadically along the line of control in Kashmir and elsewhere for smuggling, this is the first instance of drone warfare in the India-Pakistan rivalry, where both sides employ drones with the intent of causing damage on the other. What I like about this article, and the reason I'm recommending it, is that it's so opaque. It's saying they don't exactly know what happened because no one does at this point. We're not going to know. But what I can tell you is that India would not agree to a ceasefire. Pakistan, sure, they're a smaller country, but India would not unless there was some real trouble there. Available information also permits several conclusions about the military situation during the crisis. India demonstrated an ability to deliver precise standoff attacks against large swaths on Pakistan on each day of the conflict, while Pakistani air defenses likely interfered with or intercepted some attempted strikes. There is no evidence of any manned aircraft crossings into the airspace of the other side, which indicates the seriousness with which both sides view the air defense threat of the other, even on the final days of the conflict. That is something that I really hope we get more information on. I want to know what happened with these J-10s. It'd be cool to even get some combat footage of these Chinese jets. It'd be really beneficial for the U.S. And, not to be tinfoil hat here, but, and this goes to that Kissinger quote, maybe the United States wanted this to happen. I think Indians got to put their thinking caps on and think about this. Maybe the United States is seeing so much benefit from seeing Chinese military tech that they don't really care about their ally here, that they want to see what China is capable of for a real conflict down the line. That's pretty scary if you're Indian. You got to figure that out. Does the United States actually have your back when the push comes to shove? There is no evidence of any manned aircraft. On the first day of hostilities, India likely lost several aircraft to Pakistani counter-air operations. While Indian officials neither acknowledge nor deny the losses, they represent perhaps the most meaningful military costs India experienced during the 4-day conflict. India also has to be a lot more transparent with the Indian people because this is not appropriate. You have to tell people that George Bush tried this during the Iraq War, and it wasn't a good thing to do. You don't hide stuff from your people. You have to know, because they're the ones who are signing up at the end of the day. And they're the ones that need to be informed about what's going on. Also, you can't improve until you know what's reality. On May 8th through the 10th, India's integrated air and missile defense systems appears to have largely defeated several waves of Pakistani drone attacks of ambiguous scope, scale, and intensity. On May 9th and 10th, the Indian air and missile defense system appears to have worked against limited Pakistani short-range ballistic missile attacks as well. Just see the not the rhetoric, the vocabulary they're using here. It's all speculative because we don't know. After its apparent downing of Indian aircraft on May 7th, Pakistan inflicted virtually no observable damage on Indian military units or facilities, though Indian officials have said there was some damage at 4 installations. While attention focused primarily on the air and drone campaigns, most of the May 7th strikes occurred in or near Kashmir. Subsequent fighting along the line of control in Kashmir was deadly and served as a major source of casualties for both sides. That's also something that's important here. This did not extend into either country, as they mentioned, so we didn't really get to see all the way what would have happened. Thankfully, that's very good. Thank Vishnu or Allah, whether you're in India or Pakistan, that you guys didn't actually go for blow here. That would have been a bad thing there. The political conclusions that are also possible. Again, we don't know. The India-Pakistan relationship remains crisis prone, and they will escalate. Mutual possession of nukes heavily conditioned the responses of both sides. Both sides worked to calibrate escalation and showed some ability to manage escalation adequately. The crisis was costly in terms of human lives and expended. Look, I think that what's most important here is the nuclear question. As I said, I don't think it matters. And in some ways, it might even be better if neither country had nukes or if only one did, because it would lead to a conflict that would be easily resolved because they don't have to hold them. Because when you're holding yourself back, if you even had a regular fight, if you're holding yourself back, that fight is going to go on a lot longer than it should. And that's not good. It's not good to have that because you want to get the fight out of the way. it will lead to less casualties and less people getting hurt in the long run. But the fact that both of these countries are nuclear armed powers makes it incredibly difficult for there to be a decisive conclusion. And all we can take away from this now is that Pakistan probably won. Just based on the numbers. That's all we can really say. Will Pakistan continue to win in the future? I don't know. What I think is important here, especially since we're talking about China, I'd like for you guys to watch. Let's see, I hadn't even thought of playing this. Let's pull this up. Eric Lee is one of my favorite Chinese spokespeople. Oh, that's definitely not it. I believe his name's Eric Lee. Yes, okay. Here we have a great clip here. Eric Lee is obviously biased. He's Chinese.
That a lot of people...
And he is very valuable in terms of seeing the ambitions of the Chinese in the near future. So let's see what he has to say here about China's peaceful rise as he determines it.
In Hong Kong who'd like to remain free will not be free. And a lot of people in Taiwan who would like to be free will not in the end be free. They will be unified, but on the conditions dictated by China. That's the issue, right? And I don't see a story here that begins to respect the longing for democratic freedom that you see in Taiwan and that you see in Hong Kong. That is a problem for you. It's how you get there. Even if you agreed that this is one China, you may have to live with the fact there are many Chinas.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, what do you mean we have to live with the idea of many Chinas? I mean, Hong Kong obviously has its own mini constitution, which I think almost in modern history is unprecedented. Mm-hmm. I can't find an example where one nation state could be so tolerant as to have its sovereign territory, a part of sovereign territory, completely ruled, almost autonomous.
This is before the Hong Kong takeover.
With its own constitution. So I think I'm optimistic that we could resolve these differences amongst ourselves. And let me also help, if I could, relieve your anxiety a little bit, as you earlier pointed out about the potential for Chinese dominance of the world. Let me say this: I will wager a bet today that in 25 years, when we return for the 50th anniversary of the Nesca Conference, that
you're very welcome.
that China will not be dominating the world at that time. And I'll wager that bet for two reasons. One is because I don't believe China intends to dominate the world. And number two is, even if they did, they would fail at it. Because we've moved way past beyond the age of dominance. I think it will be difficult for any one power to dominate the world. It's the wrong mindset. And let me, if I could, please let me finish my train of thought. You know, in 20-some years ago, I was still a youngster coming out of university. At that time, China was just beginning to, sort of barely joining the WTO, was trying to, emerge. And there was a lot of anxiety at that time, even. And I read one day, I was reading the Wall Street Journal, I think, on the left column. There was a picture of the Chinese grand strategist, Zheng Bijian, who coined the term peaceful rise. And he said that China's aspiration is to rise peacefully. And I read that. I was very excited. I went out and talked to people and said, we're going to rise peacefully. and everybody was very, very suspicious and skeptical. And they attacked the idea and all of that. And to this day, I go out and say, peaceful rise, and people look at me saying, what are you smoking? Right? But let me just say this. In my lifetime, just in my career, peaceful rise has already happened. It's a fact on the ground. We went from, since I started my career in business, we went from a poor agrarian country to a behemoth that that is China today. Behemoth in every respect, okay? Yet, no country has been invaded. Not a single shot fired. no violence. And if you look at human history, the rise of every power, from Athenian Empire to the Roman Empire to the British Empire to America's manifest destiny, to the rise of modern Germany and modern Japan, Ottoman Empire, every single one of them, their rise was accompanied by tremendous bloodshed, colonization, wars, massacres, okay? And China's rise to date has been bigger and faster than them all.
So what's relevant here is that I think the real winner of the India-Pakistan war is probably China. Maybe the United States, if you have your tinfoil hat on and you're Indian and you're going, they wanted us to lose so they could see the tech that the Chinese have. But I think that China is really the winner here. And, you can be mad at China. I'm not mad at China. It's not China's fault that any of this happened. But China is very, very smart. We will continue to see them act in this very smart way. And India and Pakistan will continue to fight this out, I assume. But India, I'm telling you, I don't think you're going to be able to beat Pakistan with the tech that you currently have. You're going to need something a whole lot better, and I don't know how you're going to get that. With that, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's let one of these out for all the fallen. All those poor soldiers in Pakistan and India that were victims of this, as well as the victims in Kashmir. Terrible, terrible thing that happened there. I hope that you guys understand here that I'm not picking a side here, and I hope you understand why. I hope everyone got something out of this. If you disagree, let me know. If anyone knows Eric Lee, let me know. I'd love to get him on the program. Please let me know, because this is a very important conflict, and no one's covering it properly, and I think that the West is going to regret not covering it properly. So with that, I leave you guys. I hope everyone has a great week. I hope every Indian stays safe. I hope every Pakistani stays safe. India number one, audio vibes. Let's have an India number one just for the chat. And also, to be even-sided, we got to have a Pakistan number one. You are both number one in my book if you're not fighting. You got to stop the fight. You have to stop the fighting, India, Pakistan. There are no winners in the war. So with that, please like, comment, subscribe. Anyone know Eric Lee? Let me know. Anyone know Ahmed Rashid? Ahmed Rashid, let me know. I'd love to get him on. This guy's a genius. Read this book. Definitely worth reading. Everyone have a great night. In India and Pakistan, everyone have a great day. I know it's daytime over there. I hope you guys catch up on this. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. If I'm completely wrong and India is number one indefinitely, let me know. If Pakistan's number one, let me know. But I hope you guys have a very fruitful debate down in the comments. Thank you, everyone. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys on the next stream.